Battlegrounds Season 7 Metas. Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new video, and of course we've got a spreadsheet to accompany this particular thing and debacle. So, as a lot of you know, you're probably looking at the game going, what are you talking about, Richard? Season 7 Battlegrounds? Metas for that? Surely, what is this about? Has Kabam not announced something? What's going on? Well, as a lot of you know, Kabam did actually post what the Season 7 meta would be, as well as other ones. So you can see there, Season 7 meta. They also post what Season 8 meta would be, and that's really it. So we have an idea of what is going to be the Season 7 meta, and especially because this video will focus on how to get you out of victory track, or how to kind of progress up victory track, and looking at some really cool options and some things to note. Do bear in mind, by the time this video has been released, 7-star information will be out, and it will be a case, because that will kind of flow into the latter point of April and into maybe early parts of May. Do be warned, you may face off against 7-star champions in Battlegrounds. That is a warning. Kabam have already put in things of how you earn stuff, points wise in alliance based events, so do be cautious. This will be a big thing, then this will be a big issue. It also may be something of an opportunity for players not to open 7 stars and get possibly, depending on matchmaking, I'm not 100% sure if it will be affected, but let's face it, if you're going into game and you're like, right, well, if it's taking in, look, it may take in prestige, it may take in a certain champion, kind of data and information from an analytical perspective, and going, algorithmically, you could face off against 7-star. Maybe don't open that 7-star champion crystal and see how you're going to face off with your matchmaking. Okay, warning out of the way with that one. Let's get into it. Right, Season 7 meta. Brute force. Brute force, if the attacker hasn't landed a hit in 6 seconds, they take direct damage, losing 100% of their total health over 30 seconds. Landing a hit removes their damage and resets the timer. The strength of the damage is affected by class relationships. So essentially, make sure you hit the enemy, which I think this meta is going to be a little bit annoying if you don't get those hits in. And of course, there's going to be some really key defenders that are going to really hamper into that one. Makes it worse because fight or flight. Every 12 seconds, the defender gains an unstoppable buff for 4 seconds. If the attacker is far away from the defender, when this triggers, the attacker gains unstoppable instead. Now, look, between one and the other, it's either going to be a case of tricky defenders will force you to change the way that you play. Whether you're keeping your distance, let's face it, brute force, you need to be aggressive. Flight or flight, you need to keep your distance. So it's so brute force, don't keep your distance. Fight or flight, do keep your distance. It's like you're kind of like as a double negative with this. So your rotation and timing is going to be very important, so you don't get that degen and don't excessively take a lot of damage. And the final thing is that we've got Dauntless, which is the attacker starts with their spirit gauge at 50%, which can be helpful, right? But it's going to be specific to if you have certain relics. Certain relics are going to be helpful for different kinds of scenarios, depending in what you bind them into, what the interaction is. Whether or not, here's an example. We go to the relic of Hulkbuster, and you've got shock effects, which then kind of allow for combat power rate to be reduced. It can help to be quite aggressive, because if you've got a champion that power controls, again, that can be something that plays into it. More so that, if you want to play aggressively and push enemy champions to power bars, that's going to be an issue when it comes to Gladiator Circuit Week 1, where you've got to have, when you have Spite and Luck, you need power control for that as a necessity. But in any case, if you want to check out the link in the description, we have got information we're going to be going off on this particular video, and we will be returning back to certain champions in game that are effective for whatever reasons. So, where do we begin with all of this? Well, as I've said here, the meta will be either fine or very annoying, especially if you need to keep your distance at times. Part of fight or flight, you may need stagger, nullify or slow debuff champions to keep up aggression if you choose. Now that is based on fight or flight and how you kind of go against that. So if you're going to be aggressive, then you're going to have to look at that 12-second timer in the top right-hand corner and go, okay, well, that's going to come about. Where's brute force with the timer? I've obviously got to kind of figure out, do I want to play aggressively? Do I want to nullify? Do I want to stagger, or do I want to slow debuff? Sorry, combine those things. And what's stagger? Well, anyway, yeah, anyway, like, moving on. In any case, it's times I kind of say, like, you know, what's your personal preference? What is going to be frustrating, and kind of play to that, whether it's to your strengths, to your weaknesses on certain things. I think with this one, rather than saying that there's a broad plethora of defenders, I think non-specific options of defenders are going to be just pretty good, just putting in there from a defensive perspective. Like some of the ones kind of mentioned here, and I've got to add, I've got to change one actually whilst like on here. Shuri and so many other general defenders are going to be annoying for this. Why and how? A lot of the time when you're facing off against certain champions, and as I've kind of like put in the notes to the left-hand side, but I will kind of go to some of these champions in game. Choosing a champion that takes a while to throw a special attack. We're talking SP2s of Apocalypse. God, I forget what words are. Apocalypse. Champions that have, yeah, like long durations in their special attacks. Whether or not it's going to be the likes of King Groot, SP1, Nimrod. There's so many others. Kingpin as well. When you're pushing that champion around SP1s, there's a lot of mental load that you've got to think about rotations as to timing, and a lot of the time it will be a case of you've got to keep up the aggression when it comes to enemies. They're going to spend a lot of time not throwing special attacks at you, and this meta will probably be a little bit annoying for some, and you know, very easy to get on with others. Do look to other champions. Like, there's a lot of really good kind of options nowadays as defensive options, which are frustrating. One of the great ones that came out of last season, one of my personal favorites, and has won me a lot of rounds, is Spider-Man Supreme, a largely new champion that's, again, incredibly frustrating. One champion that I would love to get is Spot, and yeah, like, Spot is a fantastic champion and a fantastic option if you are indeed looking for something that's going to be frustrating. A champion that you may not be able to hit that much, and do bear in mind, the less you're able to hit a champion, the more likely that brute force is going to boom hit you with a huge ton of damage because you're not able to get the hits in. Also look to other champions similar. Champions that will struggle, make you struggle for a particular type of rotation, which is going to be punishing or annoying. One of my favourites for that would be Mephisto. Now, I don't have a 6-star version of this champion or not. I mean, I've got a 5-star version. I don't think I've got a 6-star version of it. But I'd love a 6-star version of Mephisto. And Mephisto can do the business in order to be one of those champions that, whilst he's got aura of incineration, that you're unable to kind of like hit him because it will be punishing for you, so don't get punished. Likewise with a few other champions as well that do discourage that kind of like hitting against them because it ain't going to be good. The likes of Penny Parker, Nimrod as well requires specific types of rotations or less aggressive rotations. The same could be said for Omega Sentinel unless you have the right counter. And one that I didn't even mention just yet, which is still good, is Mysterio. Once that champion throws an SP1, you're not going to want to hit that champion that much. That's something that's going to be very kind of key right there. Same thing with the SP2, because again, you'll be giving positive things to that particular defender. And so many others. There's so many to mention. Mojo is another example. Nick Fury as well, when he gets into certain points of, it go unblockable at certain stages. So you know, you want to kind of keep your distance and kind of go in at the right time, intercept, so your rotation. Absorbing Man. Overseer, a great champion, one of my favourites that I need to rank up, and Mojo, I think I've mentioned that one, or maybe didn't, but yeah, there's so many others, even Craven as well. Now counters will be interesting, with a lot of those mentioned. Yes, there are counters, maybe sometimes not so much. I'm sure a lot of people will use the likes of Human Torch, Magneto, Archangel, Sunspot, to name but a few. But as well, it depends how you want to take on the slow debuff that comes from fight or flight. Now, do bear in mind, I'm sure people will disagree with going like, well, you could just rotate around it. You don't really have to worry about that unstoppable coming up. But do bear in mind, as I said to the first point, brute force will allow your playstyle to be very aggressive. And if it's going to be very aggressive, then you might want to think about focusing on one thing. And if the one thing is indeed getting a hit in, then you want to suppress that unstoppable. And there's so many different ways to kind of do that. And this is where a lot of champions that nullify and stagger can be very, very helpful. So whether or not, first of all, you look at certain ones like Dr. Doom, one of my personal favorites, Juggernaut, love that champion for this stuff, Wiccan as well, Tigra and the neutralize debuff, and there's a few other champions that do the neutralize debuff, which suppresses those buffs, Hood, Jane Foster with stagger, Dormammu, Mephisto as well. So many options. There are so many options to think of, but also ones in the science. It's not just about Mystic, it's all about science as well. If you can get Mr. Fantastic's SP1, if you can get yourself Anti-Venom's heavy attack and Titania's heavy attack, you're going to have a good time with kind of like dealing with staggering and also being very aggressive at the same time. We've also got other options as well. Slow debuff can come into play. Cap Infinity War does a nullify for it, as it's an other. It's very rare, kind of like taking down Unstoppable. If I've missed out some, then put it in the comment section. She-Hulk, Spider-Gwen, Silver Centurion, again, some heavy attack rotation champions. SP1 Dragon-Man, SP1 Red Guardian, and a few others as well. Storm Pyramid X, Jubilee of SP1, going right the way down. So there's lots of different options for you to play about with when it comes to taking down this meta and choices. I'm not saying that you should go and kind of like do this kind of level of kind of countering or choose these options when it comes to defenders, but it's a case of like trying and experimenting. And before this meta drops and before the season drops, of course, I want to experiment or come up with options. But in any case, I hope this video helped. Check out the spreadsheet in the link in the description. And thank you very much for watching. Check out some other content, which will be located on screen right now. Good luck in Season 7 when it drops next week, I want to assume. And yeah, see you all soon. Bye-bye.